So Doxa is one of these watchmakers that a lot of watch enthusiasts have heard of, but don't know much about. And I'm going to try to change that in today's episode. So here's a little crash course on the history of one of the most well-respected underdogs in Swiss sports watchmaking. It is 2:15 p.m. Let's get down to business. Now guys, I'm actually wearing a Doxa right now, my Doxa Sub 200 Seagraph 2. This is the Caribbean model with the blue dial and bezel inlay, and this is actually one of their more modern designs. It does, I guess you could argue, still have a cushion case, but when you look at their current catalog, you can see, the beads of rice bracelets and the really old school cushion case. And some of them are even, faux patinated. They're really holding on to their heritage. Speaking of their heritage, Doxa was founded in 1889 in Le Locle, Switzerland by a 21-year-old. To put that in perspective, I'm almost 35 and I'm still up. I get it. I always joke about how my parents wanted me to be a doctor, but it's like, I can't get it. I couldn't get into medical school. I have eye addiction. So we now know Doxa as making sports watches, specifically divers. But they started out, like many other watchmakers did at the time, producing things like pocket watches. Now, my personal favorite part of Doxa's history is in 1907 when they filed a patent for the Doxa 8-day caliber. This was standard equipment on the Bugatti race cars of that era. Insane. And this might be one of the earliest kind of crossovers when we're looking at automotive and horological technology kind of just coalescing. Fast forward a few decades. In 1957, Doxa was kind of experimenting with minimalist Bauhaus designs with their Doxa Graphique collection. These were actually square and rectangular dress watches that, again, had kind of a Bauhaus look to them. But it was really in the 1960s with the introduction of the Doxa sub-series, like the watch that I have on right now, that really made Doxa the watchmaker that we know of today. Now, we're gonna jump back in time a tiny bit to 1956. Jacques-Yves Cousteau came out with his actually Oscar award-winning documentary, The Silent World. Just some quick trivia here. This was one of the first films to feature underwater cinematography. So it's something that we totally take for granted now, especially because, people's smartphones can now go underwater, and we have things like GoPros that can literally just be dropped into the Marianas Trench. Back then in 1956, underwater cinematography was like cutting edge stuff. But during that documentary, Jacques-Yves Cousteau and his team could be seen wearing dive watches, and that was a very early iteration of the Doxa sub-series of divers. So nowadays, as I mentioned kind of earlier on in the episode, Doxa has maintained their roots, kind of holding on to that heritage of focusing on dive watches. The Graphique collection can still be found online, though obviously those are going to be vintage examples. Most recent data reports that Doxa produced 10,000 watches in 2022, so that means 10,000 less than even Vacheron Constantin. So, this is a very independent watchmaker operating on really not a large scale at all. And the truth is that is absolutely contributing to Doxa not really being super duper well known, even though in the enthusiast community, Doxa is regarded with a lot of respect. And again, you go on their current catalog, you still see the bold dials, you still see colors that aren't commonly used in watchmaking with these crazy oranges and yellows, even pastel blues and just really retro things, faux patination. You even see some distressed cases with some of their more limited models. And yes, they do have a few more modern designs, things like this Sub 200 Seagraph 2, excuse me. So if you're in the market for a very well-made, solid dive watch with a ton of history, I would say to consider Doxa on your next shopping trip. Now, they're not super duper common, so you're probably gonna have to jump online to do some research, and hopefully videos like this will help put these brands into perspective, because I know Seiko gets a lot of accolades for their sports watches although they're becoming a little bit overpriced in my opinion. And Rolex, of course, they are a sports watch producer, whether or not you want to accept that. Rolex produces sports watches pretty much exclusively, except for the Cellini line, which is But there are other really cool watchmakers that are kind of, I would say, less known than even Oris these days. Watchmakers like Doxa, who have a very, very rich history and who make awesome watches. So let me know what you think, guys. Do you own a Doxa? If you do, which one is it? Leave that comment. And have you been kind of on the fence about it? And which one would you be looking at if you were to pull the trigger on one? Again, I chose this blue dial, blue bezel Caribbean sub 200 Seagraph 2 because I did want a blue diver, and having a kind of cushion, a subtle cushion case with a really nice chronograph complication, this just made it a very, very easy decision for me, because the dial is it has such depth and vibrance, and it plays with the light so well. The registers are bordered so nicely, and it's just incredibly solid. It feels like a tank on the wrist, but it's not super cumbersome. And this is a watch that I wear pretty much every day now. It's just a very easy watch to grab and throw on the wrist. And it's comfortable, and it's really well made, and I don't really have to baby it. But let me know what you think. I will catch you on the next one. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. I'm Jory Goodman, the time teller, and always remember, I didn't invent time. I just tell it.